Welcome to the Global News Podcast from the BBC. I'm Ankur Desai. On this episode, I'm joined by Christopher Giles from the BBC investigations team. And Christopher, you've been reporting on a Russian vigilante group. Now, they've been enforcing Vladimir Putin's social agenda. So what did you find? And just tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, that's right. So for the past year, we've been investigating a group called Russkaya Obshina, which is Russian community. They have emerged really since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So in 2022, 2023, we saw them starting to take action on the ground and in the streets in Russia. And their main activities are raids. So raids against the LGBT community, raids against nightclubs, and also raids against migrants, their places of work, places of leisure. And we found that since 2023, they have conducted over 900 raids.
Across the country or just in Moscow?
Across the country.
Yeah.
So this has become a nationwide movement of nationalist vigilantes. They've got close to 150 branches across Russia and the occupied territories. And that estimate is likely an underestimate because we've been analysing publicly available information. So it's likely the scale of the activities is actually larger than that.
You've spoken to actually someone who was targeted by these vigilantes, Katya. Tell us a bit more about Katya and her story. What happened?
Yeah, so Katya is a party organizer in her hometown of Arhangelsk in northern Russia. And she was hosting a 30th birthday party. And during that party, it was raided by Russkaya Obshina alongside law enforcement. The group later said that they were looking for evidence of so-called LGBT propaganda, which is illegal in Russia. They took Katya away for questioning after the events. They didn't find any evidence, but later Russkaya Obshina members testified in court. And at her party, there was a red neon cross-shaped lamp, and they claimed to be offended by this lamp. And so she was charged for blasphemy in Russia and given 200 hours of community service as a sentence. So that's just one example of many examples where these raids are taking place across different towns and cities in Russia by the group when they feel someone isn't aligning with their view of traditional values.
And during this raid, does it get quite physical in terms of the people in that nightclub, Katya, her friends, her family?
Yeah, exactly. So at the raid itself, we see law enforcement alongside the group, verbally attacking her friends that came to the party. We also see pushing and physical attacks by also members of law enforcement. So for her, it was really a shock because this was the thing that she really cared about. It was about self-expression. So to have her world suddenly turned upside down like that was very disruptive for her.
And since this all went down, how's she been feeling? How are her friends and family been?
Yeah, so I think she was really shocked by what happened. And another component to their actions is what they do on social media. So following the raid, Russkaya Obshina and their members in that local branch, they took to social media to talk about the event and what happened. She's also received online harassment following the event. So it's been a really tough experience for her. And I think in general in Russia, that space for self-expression is shrinking following the war. The space for protests and self-expression it has shrunk, and that's an example of that.
Yeah, what does this say then about Putin's Russia right now and what it's like, especially for communities that are marginalised in this manner?
What's happened is after the full-scale invasion, Putin has put a greater emphasis on so-called traditional values and also the prominence of the Orthodox Church has become more important. And alongside that, nationalist groups like Russkaya Obshina, which is the biggest, have come to the fore to pursue the aims of the state. And you've seen also a number of laws against LGBT, so-called propaganda. You've also seen a bigger movement against migrants in the country. And all of this from the people that we've spoken to in the country who've been impacted by the group claim that or say that it's creating hostility and fear in everyday life.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, they are linked to some major Russian institutions, aren't they?
Exactly. So the Orthodox Church is the main one. And in 2025, so last year, the Orthodox Church formally asked its bishops across the country to partner with Russkaya Obshina. So that's a big institutional relationship you have, and you can see that in the videos they put out on social media. Often they go to rallies together with Orthodox priests, and then alongside that, they also have the support of prominent voices on the right and in nationalist politics within Russia.
And you've spoken to some current as well as former vigilantes as well. What do they have to say?
Yeah, so we spoke to some current members and supporters, and what they describe is they're motivated by a sense of what they call like brotherhood. We also found that many of the members had formerly fought on the front line of Ukraine. So it's people who've gone and joined the full-scale invasion. They've returned back to Russia, and they're looking for that kind of purpose, that brotherhood that they had experienced before, and also the patrolling the cities and towns in Russia. It all speaks to these men searching for a purpose when they return from the war. But we also spoke to former members, and they describe how they felt Russkaya Obshina was often curating or was often instigating events such as raids to make videos and post them on Telegram and VK to create a kind of hype around the events, what they were doing. They didn't feel it was actually having a positive impact inside of Russia.
What about some of the former members? What do they say about why they left?
Yeah, so the former members often described wanting greater organization. One former member described how he'd go on raids, but no one would take accountability for what happened. We also spoke to someone who leads a civilian patrol group. So this is kind of similar to Russkaya Obshina, but it's part of a formal framework where everyday civilians are trained and help the police. And he was critical of Russkaya Obshina because he said they don't have any legal authority or official oversight. So, who's kind of managing, what they're doing on the ground.
Okay, so the group itself, did you receive any sort of response from them?
We did reach out to them and put our findings to them. And they didn't respond to us directly, but they did take to social media. And they said they didn't respond because the Western media would twist anything that they say. And they also said that the BBC had invented the sources of funding. So as part of this investigation, we saw financial documents showed that there were two major funders who had funded Russkaya Obshina, who are figures who are close to the Kremlin circles. So they pushed back against that finding that we had.
Where does this leave Russian people?
Yes, I think there's definitely a shrinking space for people like Katya who want to organize parties and have forms of self-expression and also there's a shrinking space as well for things like protests that we've seen since the full-scale invasion. But that being said, we spoke with one migrant from Kyrgyzstan who was targeted by Russkaya Obshina in a smear campaign online, and actually that community really rallied round her when it happened. So it is a shrinking space, but also there are still different there's still different strands of Russia and Russian society.
Christopher, thank you so much for coming along. That's Christopher Giles from the BBC's Investigations team. Do like and subscribe to this platform. If you'd like more from us, you can check out the Global News Podcast from wherever you get your podcast from as well. Thanks for your company.